Thanks for coming to speak to me today about commonly asked consumer questions about poultry.
Pleasure.
What standards do TURK'S comply with to ensure that the chickens are free range?
There are a number of different sets of criteria. Some are done through the poultry industry and some are done through SPCA, but we like to be above all of those. So at the moment we're developing our own one and looking at using someone like Assure to do the audit to make sure we are up to our standards that we set for ourselves.
How often are the birds given access to the outdoors?
The first 2 to 3 weeks they stay inside because they're little chickens and they haven't got the protection, so we wait for their feathers to grow. Once that's happened, at about 17, 18 days of age, we open up the sheds and they have full access to outside during daylight hours, unless it's really bad weather and we bring them in just for their own protection.
What is the size of the outdoor area?
We've got 2 free-range farms and both of them have got an excess of 3,000 square metres. But the room they've got, and it's fenced off per different shed, and we observe what their chickens' behaviour is like, and we can notice that the birds never really get out to the very edges of the amount of room they've got. So they obviously have enough for what they want.
And how much shade or shelter do they get while they're outside?
We've got a lot of shelter cloth up at the moment because we've got trees which are only just being established. So there's quite a lot of shade, but there will be more as time goes on. As well as that, we've made the sheds so they've got about a 2 metre eave hanging out from where they actually leave the shed, and they use that as a bit of protection from the sun as well.
Can you tell me what age the birds are reared to?
We get them at day 1 when they're just hatched, and by the time they're 34 to 35 days we can take one cut out of the shed, and they're around the 1.4 kilos when they're dressed and ready to eat. And then we grow a few more on till about day 42 and they'll be up around the nearly 2 kilos.
Can you tell me if there are any antibiotics or growth hormones used in the chickens?
Antibiotics is used for a very small amount under supervision of the vets. Luckily in New Zealand we have very few challenges compared to the rest of the world. We have a very healthy poultry industry in New Zealand, so we don't need very many, but there is a little bit used, but very strictly, and the antibiotics used are not the type that are used within the human antibiotics, so we keep it quite separate. But when they test the birds that have had antibiotics, there's a withholding period, and it's made sure that there's no traces of antibiotics in the product at the end. Growth promoters, it's a myth that's been in New Zealand for a long time, and in my lifetime they've never been used. Prior to that I'm not sure, but you might find them in South America or somewhere, but certainly not in New Zealand. It's actually illegal as well.
Are you looking to get the SPCA blue tick on your farm?
We looked at the SPCA and we've decided we won't go for it. We set our standards higher than the SPCA did, so we think we can actually get better results without them, and we'll get an independent group such as Assure to do a totally independent audit of our farms. How
are your chickens raised?
They come in at day old and we place them into a preheated shed or barn. They have free access to water and food. We leave the lights on for the first 24 hours just so they get accustomed to the barn, and then they're free to grow, and they get I think it's about 8 hours sleep a night, which is probably more than I get, and they're really free to grow at their own rate, to walk around as they want.
Are chickens given hormones to make them grow faster?
No, they're not. The reason that our chickens and New Zealand's chickens grow so fast is because we don't have the challenges on the health side of things. So New Zealand's chickens actually grow some of the best growth rates in the world. And the other reason is, over the years there's been a lot of genetic selection, not genetic engineering, which is quite natural for mankind for thousands of years. And they've selected birds that have traits that will grow meat faster than the bird from 30, 40 years ago.
Are meat chickens kept in cages at all?
No, meat chickens are definitely not kept in cages in New Zealand. Overseas, some places, like I think Russia, they're experimenting with it, but certainly not in New Zealand.
Can you explain to me what a meat chicken is?
Right. A meat chicken is just a chicken that's been genetically selected to grow very fast and to have very tender meat. Much like white veal or certain ducks they have for meat. We have other chickens that are genetically selected to lay eggs, and they grow far slower. So it's really just a selection of the traits you want in an animal.
I brought a chicken that had been basted to make it more tender. What does this mean?
Basted is like it's been marinated, or when you buy a piece of pork, you might put little cuts in and put cloves of garlic or whatever you like to put in it. Well, it's much the same thing, but of course we do it on a mass scale. So we have a machine that actually has a whole lot of needles and injects into the meat the brine, which contains salts and flavours. That also helps break the fibre a little bit. So when you break a fibre of meat, that helps the tenderness of the meat. So when you barbecue it, it'll come out a lot more tender than if it wasn't basted.
Can you explain to me the killing process at TURK'S?
Much like you've probably seen a processing works for a sheep or cattle. It's much the same, but all in miniature, of course. The birds are electrically stunned, which makes them unconscious, doesn't kill them. And then their throat has been mechanically cut, unconscious. From there, it's a series of machines to take the feathers and offal out. And then we chill it, clean it, wash it, and chill it down.
What quality testing is in place at TURK'S?
There's quite a lot of quality testing, not just on the birds as they come into the plant, but after they've been processed as well. We take 3 birds every day and do a sample from them which goes to an independent lab. And they check for things like E. coli, Campylobacter, and a range of other things. Salmonella is another one. But on top of that, there are samples taken by Food Safety Authority, and they get checked for any high levels of heavy metals or antibiotics and a number of things. So there are a lot of checks in place, and that's all monitored not only just in the company but in the industry. So we have an industry standard to make sure we're right up there with the food safety health standard.
TURK'S chickens are corn fed. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Yes, corn fed is something that really comes from Europe and has been there for a long, long time. Also America uses mainly corn because that's the crop they can access easiest. We did it because we wanted to be different from the other competitors of ours. We had to have some sort of point of difference. But we soon realised the meat actually tastes better. So we've ended up creating a nice niche market. The other nice thing about it is the corn is grown in New Zealand, so we're using a New Zealand product where the majority of the food manufactured by our competitors use mainly wheat, which comes from either Canada or Australia.